Hey everybody, Techtober is in full swing, so we have a lot to talk about. Meta gave Apple a run for their money, Microsoft gave a lot of PCs a whole lot of free performance upgrades, and we have to talk about all the new antitrust lawsuits. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video was sponsored by Brilliant. Okay, this week we'll start the brief with Apple launching macOS 14 Sonoma. It's a fairly minor update with changes to things like desktop widgets and some fancy new screensavers, but it's a nice one nonetheless. Next, Xiaomi launched the 13T and the 13T Pro. These are budget flagships that come with Leica cameras and fancy screens, but interestingly, MediaTek chips in the form of the Dimensity 9200 Plus and the Dimensity 8200 Ultra. Finally, we see some high-end competition for Qualcomm. Also newly released this week was the brand new $60 Raspberry Pi 5, which launches in October with an ARM-based quad-core processor and 4GB of RAM. Over at Nothing, CMF, its affordability-focused brand, launched its first products in the form of the Buds Pro for $49, the Watch Pro for $69 with some nice watch faces, and a 65-watt GAN fast charger for $39. This is pretty aggressive pricing. Next, OpenAI made a ChatGPT update which enables its AI to, quote, see, hear, and speak for image recognition and voice features, so you can, for example, take a photo of your toolbox and ask it which tool to use for a task. Really cool. Oh, and OpenAI founder Sam Altman and Johnny Ive are reportedly collaborating on a hardware AI device too, and they're in deep talks to raise $1 billion to fund it, yes, $1 billion, to build the, quote, iPhone of artificial intelligence. So ChatGPT could soon have a body to go along with the ability to see, hear, and speak. You know, next step, nuclear annihilation, I guess. Talking of which, Tesla posted an update to its humanoid robot, Optimus, showing it picking up stuff with its fingers, which is not an easy thing for robots. This looked really good, but we have no idea if it's just a demo or if it's really good as it seems. Also this week, Huawei continued its comeback by launching a huge portfolio of devices. First, the Mate 60 RS Extraordinary Master Edition, which is the ultra-premium model of the company that it now dropped the Porsche branding from. Then the MatePad Pro 13.2 tablet, the Huawei FreeBuds Pro 3 with Huawei's own Kirin A2 chip, and more. And not to be outdone, we also got leaks saying that Samsung will launch a whole family of fan edition products, including not just the S23 FE phone, but also the Buds FE and even a Tab S9 FE. So if you buy all of them, you can just declare yourself as the ultimate Samsung superfan, I guess. That's the idea. And finally, Motorola is disabling Android phones purchased through unauthorized sellers in Mexico, claiming that this is due to high rates of irregular devices in the country. Which, maybe, but a company remotely disabling a phone that you had just bought is a pretty big yikes from me. Okay, my first story of the week is going to be the Meta Quest 3, which was just announced, and it takes big shots at Apple. I think this is the most impressive looking new hardware in a while, but the question remains whether people want to have these headsets at all in the first place. So the Quest 3 is what the company calls the first mainstream mixed reality headset on the market, as they beat Apple both on time and on price, while delivering on more or less the same general promise. So first, the hardware is a major upgrade. It is 40% slimmer versus the 2, it has much better optics through its pancake lenses, the controllers are lighter, and the new Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2 chip offers 2.5 times the graphics performance over its predecessor. All the early hands-on reports claim that the image you get is way better, and that is in part because they now have a 90 to 120 Hz display with significantly higher resolution too. But even more important than just the VR stuff is that Meta actually made a budget version of what Apple claims to have done with spatial computing. There is full color pass-through that has triple the resolution of even the much more expensive Quest Pro, and reviewers reported that it is good enough to comfortably read even small things like your phone's screen through the headset, and objects are also recognized so games can actually interact with them. Apple's tech is certainly way more fancy, but this means that the Quest 3 can functionally do basically the same thing as the Vision Pro and can do it well enough, except it only costs $500, it's available pretty much right away, and you don't actually need a battery that's hanging off on a cable and attached to your belt. Really, the only major functional thing missing from the Quest versus the Vision Pro is the face tracking tech that allows for those 3D avatars for FaceTime calls, as well as the kind of eerie pass-through for your eyes. So I find this technically really impressive, and I think this might be one of those cases where shooting for the stars and perfection might not be the winning strategy, and instead it might be to just launch something that is good enough and is actually affordable and is actually available. But of course the real question is whether people will want mixed reality in the first place, and I think the answer to that is a little less clear. So the Quest 3 comes with a few major game launches, of which the most important ones are probably Roblox for getting the kids hooked, and a whole Assassin's Creed game, which they claim is a full-length AAA title. The platform definitely needs more of that. There's also an integration for Xbox Cloud Gaming, but for mixed reality, we haven't actually seen anything exciting past a few demos, and so both Apple and Meta still have to convince users that there's actually something there. So we're kind of in a place now where the hardware is now really impressive, but we're still kind of waiting for the real killer app for this whole category to go mainstream. And of course, Mark Zuckerberg has invested so much into this platform that I guess he can't really give up, so they better try to find something quick. Okay, and for my second story of the week, Microsoft is giving a lot of laptops a free performance boost. To be specific, an average of 16% increase for frames per second and overall 27% latency reduction using just a Windows software update. So what kind of sorcery are they tapping into? Well, you know how your laptop CPU actually has an integrated GPU that comes along with it? Well, if you also use a dedicated GPU, like one from NVIDIA or AMD, well, those two are now going to be working much better together. This feature is called CASO, and it allows for the integrated GPU to run the display and the basic tasks, while the discrete GPU can actually focus on the heavy tasks like gaming or rendering stuff in demanding programs. Now, NVIDIA and AMD already do a similar thing, but they need a dedicated hardware controller for it called an MUX switch, which only some better laptops included or supported in the past, and for AMD you even needed both an AMD CPU and a GPU as well. But the Microsoft solution happens entirely via software. It is claimed to be even more efficient than the MUX switch, and it supports a wide range of hardware as well as games across DirectX 11 and 12, and it's free. Just free performance. Great. You're supposed to get the update automatically if your hardware supports it, and a bunch of Windows 11 devices already have this enabled apparently, but there's no way to tell whether they do, so we'll just have to look around and wait, I guess. Okay, and for my third story of the week, I think we could start a new recurring segment called Antitrust Weekly, because right as the Microsoft Activision trial has kind of wrapped up, we now have two big new trials to talk about. First, Amazon is now in the spotlight, facing a 172-page lawsuit from the FTC. The claim is that Amazon imposes an economy-wide hidden tax on virtually everyone. The judge is examining practices like the bundling of Prime services and pressuring sellers to advertise on the platform, replacing organic search results with paid ads. And if any of the FTC's demands get passed, it could reshape e-commerce as we know it, so stay tuned. And second, Google's trial is still active too, and this week Apple's Eddie Q was on the stand to testify on whether Google paying $20 billion annually to Apple to be the default search engine on their devices is helping the search giant illegally maintain its market share. The FTC is implying that, for example, Apple might have built a search engine of its own if those payments hadn't been allowed. Clearly, the regulators are rethinking how the entire tech economy should work. But if you're like, wait a second, isn't building a search engine like really hard? Well, then I have some good news for you. Brilliant has a whole 21-part course on exactly how search engines work from start to finish that teaches you everything from indexing to algorithms, performance optimizations, and more. Brilliant has similarly amazing courses on tons of other STEM topics from maths to computer science to physics, biology, and more, and whether you want to learn how to build cool stuff for yourself or just brush up on long-forgotten skills, this is the place to go. Their special sauce is that all their courses are custom designed with interactivity in mind. So they take complicated topics like a search engine, they break each of those down into many smaller chunks, they arrange those so you can progress from beginner levels to advanced ones in a little sprints, and they then make you practice what you've learned in each course with a practice exercise at the end. This interactivity is not just way more fun than simply reading a book or watching a video, it actually switches your brain from a passive mode into an actively participating one, so you retain knowledge a lot better. Brilliant has thousands of lessons covering tons of STEM topics, and new lessons get added every month, so whatever STEM skill it is that you want to get better at, they probably have you covered. You can get a 30-day free trial at brilliant.org/TFC, and the first 200 people who sign up using that link will also get 20% off their annual premium subscriptions. So check them out. Happy learning, and I'll see you next Friday.